Monday, May 15th, and shit is wild out there. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 8 of Luke, Who is Your Father? A podcast about mystery, scandal, and triumph of the familial variety. This season, we're telling you about being triplets separated at birth, the trials and tribulations of growing up separately, coming together, and the hunt for our biological father. You can see this episode and all of our episodes and bonus content by subscribing to Luke, Who is Your Father on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok at Luke Who Is Your Father Pod, at Rikki Jump, and at Jules Who Is Your Father. And follow us on Instagram at Luke Who Is Your Father, at Rikki Jump, and at KennyK23. We so appreciate your support. You guys have been amazing. And if you haven't already, we would love if you could take 10 seconds to rate, review, and subscribe to the pod and to share with a friend, family member, enemy, neighbor, turtle. Curious bystander, anyone that you think would enjoy or, more importantly, benefit from hearing. And we are in the final episodes of our first season. So we're ready to finally turn the mics over to you all and get them hypothetically, not really, but sort of out of our faces. So we've already received so much interest, so many stories. We need more. We'll always need more. You can email us at LukeWhoIsYourFatherPod@gmail.com or at Ricky@LukeWhoIsYourFather.com. We want to hear stories about family strife, daddy issues. Who is he? Who isn't he? Strife, separation, DNA discoveries, anything that you think would be a good fit. And we do have a beautiful website made by Kenny herself where you can go, read our bios, any mentions in the press, see all of the platforms that we're streaming on. And most importantly, you can submit your stories there as well. So go check that out at LukeWhoIsYourFather.com. I'm your host, Rikki.
I'm Kenny.
This is Jules. And if you're new here, we are, in fact, triplets separated at birth. We've spent our lives exploring what it means to be spisters and on the hunt for sisters and spinsters, and on the hunt for our biological father, which is what this season is building up to. We have a mere 3 episodes left, if you're counting this one. And last week, we talked all about the man, the myth, the legend, Kenny Joseph Scavo. That episode was dedicated entirely to him, how wonderful he was and still is. And we recommend, if you haven't listened to it, to go listen to that and all of our episodes if you're not caught up. So
it's
before
one of our faves.
It is a fave. So before we get into the not so fun stuff, just kidding, it's mostly fun. We got to do the crazy question of the day. So Kenny, I want to hear about the craziest, most eerie, most impossible, serendipitous, or synchronous moment of what the fuck is happening? How are these two worlds colliding? Does that ever happen to you?
I think that my most serendipitous moment that I can think of at the moment is when Lee and I were looking at houses. Well, first of all, my friend had a coworker who she was a foster for puppies. And I went to look at a litter of puppies because I wanted another dog. And I met these lovely dogs. And I have a tendency to fall in love with dogs that are a little bit more older, mature, quote unquote. Puppies just don't really have personalities, in my opinion. So I didn't really click with any of the puppies, but I did click with the mama bear, Lola. And I asked if she was available, and she was. And so then we spent kind of like, I want to say it was a month or so, going through the adoption process and fostering and doing meet and greets with Duke and Lola and everything. And there was one morning when, after Lee had met Lola for the first time, and we had gone to look at houses, and we saw this house that we really liked. Lee more so than me. It had like a really giant backyard, and I was like, who's taking care of that shit? But we went to breakfast after we saw this house, and it was at a place I had never been before. And lo and behold, the lady that was fostering Lola was there at this restaurant.
Lola and Behold.
Yep. That I'd never been to before. And it was just like, okay, I feel like this is a sign that I'm meant to get her, because we were kind of still in. She had other people that were interested in her and that kind of thing. And it just kind of set me at ease. And then, adopted her and picked her up like probably a month or so later. But that was
so sweet.
Oh, I know.
And she's the best.
she's
Lola's in training right now.
She's currently on week 5 of boot camp. But yes, that is how
she'll be a new woman.
Yes, hopefully. We still want her to maintain all of her lovely personality. We just need to rein it in a little bit.
Don't we all on this podcast, at least?
And I will throw it over to Julianne. What is your most crazy synchronicity moment?
Yeah. I don't know if mine's as cute as yours, but in honor of me being an absolute hellion this episode, Rikki and I, as you all are anticipating, and we will get into today, we did not speak for a long time, which was interesting because we lived in the same city and we also look a lot alike. So I had not been used to kind of being mistaken for anyone or anything like that. So it always still jars me. But I went bowling with a couple friends, and then we were meeting some like mutual friends. And there was a couple there, and I could tell that I love bowling. Just throwing that out there as a general fact. But we were definitely bowling on drink and drugs, I will say. And this girl and her boyfriend were there, and I could tell that he was behaving like kind of oddly towards me, but still trying to get to know me. But there was something weird happening. And then I must have said something about my sisters or made some kind of allusion to it. And we had probably been together for a couple hours at this point. And his eyes got huge, and he asked me more about my sisters. And I said that I was a triplet, and you could just see like the light switch in his head. And he asked me if my sister's name was Rikki. And I said, yes. And it was her dentist. Her dentist.
You were hanging out with Rikki's dentist?
I was hanging out with Rikki's dentist, and I promised if you met him, you wouldn't be asking the question like that. He's quite the potty animal, that one. So it was interesting just to see. I don't know what he thought up until that point. I think he expressed to me that he just thought that he was with someone that looked exactly like you when wasn't you? So, but that was funny. I went bowling with Rikki's dentist. And with that, Rikki, I will pass it off to you. Most serendipitous moment, please.
Oh my goodness. Well, I had 2 to choose from, and there's a really dark one. So we've had enough of that, haven't we? So this is really fun. So upon leaving one of my jobs, when you're a salesperson and you put in your 2 weeks, they kind of like don't let you stay. Mm-hmm. They don't want you there sowing discord. So all of a sudden I had these 2 weeks on my hands with nothing to do. And I decided to take a little international trip by myself. Since I was going by myself, I still wanted to go to like an English speaking country that wasn't too far away. So I went to Belize. So I get to Belize, and if you've ever been to Belize, you'll know that apparently you're not supposed to stay in Belize City. It's just a launch point to go to the islands. I did not know that, and it was before I spent months before my trips doing online sleuthing. Maybe that's why I do it now. Don't know. So I got to Belize City, where I had an Airbnb for 8 days, and quickly was like, oh no, I cannot stay here. This is very bad, very dangerous. My Airbnb host was super sketchy. It was no bueno. So I'm like lying in a hammock, trying to figure out these are actually 2 moments of synchronicity. Trying to figure out what I'm going to do. It's so hot. There's no AC. What am I going to do? And up walks this couple. You could tell they had just been like rum tasting, and they were talking, and I overheard them say that they were from Texas. So I was like, I've got to go introduce myself and see what they think that I should do. And it was really nice. I ended up running around with them. They were on a breakup trip because they were scuba divers. So as their breakup trip, they were going scuba diving together, and nothing bad happened. But that was nice that they were from Texas. One of them was actually from Austin. But more serendipitously, we did have dinner there that night, and there was a really nice young boy there who looked exactly like Justin Bieber and his dad, and just totally hit it off with them. They were so kind. They told me about all of their trips and travels together, and they were just like quintessential man-son, awesome pair. 2 months ago, I was on Rainy Street to see my friend Drake DJ. Go see Drake DJ Rake. And I'm walking by this guy, and he's sort of starting to try to get my attention. And I kept walking because I didn't want to talk to him. And the girl behind me was like, no, he says that he knows you. And I turned around, and it was the guy from Belize who just moved here to Austin. His name is Colton, and he really kind of saved my life up to that point, or at least my morale. So it was very nice to just see him pop out of nowhere in Austin, Texas, and be living here now.
That is so great.
Yeah.
You have some, I feel like all of Rikki's stories have a little bit of a serendipitous vibe, a synchronistic vibe.
Absolutely. I have 2 questions. Why was I under the impression that Belize is like a Spanish-speaking country?
It is in Central America.
But they don't speak Spanish?
No.
Weird. Wow. And second question, are breakup trips a thing?
Never seen one before, haven't seen one since.
I feel like I was going to comment on that. I do not think they're the norm, but I have heard of more than one. Seems painful to me, but if you are strong enough for it, go for it.
And it almost seems like they're more common in that you booked tickets to somewhere that are non-refundable, and you have to go.
Okay.
So you just go and grin and bear it.
Kind of like
I like
a
that.
New Girl where they can't get out of it, so they invite the rest of their friends.
Yeah.
Or
Got it.
couples retreat. No, maybe not break it up for that one. Anyways, proceed. Rikki, what are we getting into today?
So today, as promised, Julianne already spoke about our much alluded to rift. So we will definitely be getting into why we didn't talk for 2 years. And then before that, we'll be talking, basically, we're just going to give you guys all maybe brief recaps about the last time you saw us. We were in high school, we were graduating. So we're going to kind of just take turns and go through graduation up until us all living in Austin together. And then we'll get into, because it has to be a burning question, why Julia and I didn't speak for 2 years, how it came to be that we are speaking every day now. And we will also have Dr. Darla on as a special guest to usher us through this episode. So we'll get into resources more at the bottom, but here at the bottom of the episode, but here did want to clarify, it is Mental Health Awareness Month and Military Appreciation Month. So we just want to bring light to both of those things. I don't think it's a coincidence that they happen in the same month. And at the bottom of the episode, we'll give you some resources that you can point back to or point a friend to if they're in need. So, Jules, let's start with you. The last we left you, you're being quite rambunctious. You're in high school. Your dad has just passed away. You borrow my prom dress. We're graduating. You get scholarships and you're off to college. Tell us what happened next.
Yeah, so I went to college at the University of Colorado at Boulder. And I actually remember, I was just thinking about this the other day, and it might come as a shock based off of everything we know about my relationship with both of my parents, but I do remember asking my mom if she wanted me to put college off for a year and stay with her because I was worried about her, because she went from having myself, Kendall, my dad, and our dog in the house, and very quickly it was going to be none of the above. My childhood dog died as a result of heartbreak right after my dad passed away. So I remember being really worried about going to college. She, of course, said no, go do your thing. And college for me, I will not lie, it's a little, to the shock of no one, a little bit of a blur. It was very much so me floundering a little bit in grief, being introduced to, a lifestyle where I could do whatever I wanted, which I had already been doing a little bit of. So I had been baptized, I guess, in that sense.
Baptized by booze.
And just for the rest of this episode, I know we've alluded to it a few times that I do and have in the, I don't know. And when I talk about substance abuse, I'm referring to alcohol and then cocaine. I did not try cocaine for the first time until I was in college, 2 years in, I think. And drug use was not a huge thing in my college experience. It was just something that I kind of dabbled in when it was available. A lot of drinking, a lot of blacking out and putting myself in really dangerous situations. And I think that searching for validation from men was something that I've struggled with for much longer than then even. But that was my first kind of foray into, I had my first boyfriend ever when I was going into college. And then we had ended up breaking up because we were young. And then, that began more of a really unhealthy relationship with men in the sexual sense, just a lot of meaningless encounters fueled by alcohol. All of that did result in one sexual assault experience that I did not recognize as that for a while, and definitely beat myself up over that. And I think I still really struggle with recognizing that, yes, while I put myself in a situation where I was extremely intoxicated, and this would not have happened had I not been intoxicated, that it still was wrong that it happened. And overall, high school or college was a positive experience for me, and I'm very grateful for it. But it was very much so. I don't know how much time I spent finding myself, because I was lost for a lot of it and just really missing my dad.
Question never occurred to me till right now, as many things don't until we're on the podcast. We all deal with social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you get the brunt of it, or at least it feels most manageable to you. Do you think that is because in your most early formative years, where you're really having to get out there, be social, make friends, most of that was done under like a warm blanket of being drunk, and so now it would just always be more comfortable if you are only meeting new people or in a big social situation drunk?
Yes.
Interesting. Probably same.
Yeah.
Okay. So you make it through college.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, let's just say a good time, but not a long time. Mm-hmm. Whatever you kind of want to associate with it. But a lot of not finding yourself, because in order to find yourself, you have to be, I don't know if looking would be the right thing to say there, but at the very least,
conscious.
So then you pull it together, you make great grades, you have a nice marketing internship that was super fun, I think, with the athletic department.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then you graduate.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do from there?
So I had always wanted to work in sports. That's why I worked for the athletic department for the duration of my college career. And I did end up getting an internship with a very dear friend of my father's right out of college, and did not think this one through. And this again is something that it's hard for me to reflect back on, because I do feel like it was not handled in the best way on anyone's part, but I can realize more of my part in it now. Because I moved in with a family. I moved in with a family of, the guy was very high up in this company that I had gotten an internship for. And obviously that was extremely generous. But him and his family, and they had 3 kids.
And it was in Texas.
And this was in Texas, yes. And yes, once again, I think this will be a theme. I don't think expectations were very well laid out. And I think they thought, okay, she's coming right out of college and like she's just going to come in here and work and whatever. And button up. And I did not. I did come get a call while I was at work one day and was asked to come home for lunch. And my mom was there, as well as obviously their family. And I walked in and I said, "Is this an intervention?" And I said I needed to use the bathroom, and I went back and all of my things were packed. And so I had to go home. And that was more, they, wrote a letter about all of that. And it was, just more of, I think, the influence and that I was bringing into their home. When I'm coming home at all hours of the night, yada, yada. And they didn't want their kids to really be around that, which is still embarrassing to talk about to this day. So went home, and I ended up getting into sales at, the ripe old age of 22 or 23. And very quickly, it was an industry that it is extremely difficult to be successful in. But I sunk my teeth into it right away. And it was, an industry where you can make a ton of money without, a lot of skills, and kind of started progressing through the ranks of that very quickly and I was making a lot of money for that age. And I think this is kind of where I got more into drugs. And that just had to do cocaine. We'll just say what it is. Cocaine. I'm not out here doing bath salts. But and I think a lot of people that have been in sales know that there are some certain sales cultures where that is a really big part of it. And it's portrayed in movies and things like that. And that's, where I really, when I was dating someone that was into that sort of thing, which now that I look back on my life has always been sort of a pattern for me, is that if I'm going to be doing this, it's one of the reasons is that I'm surrounded by it, probably because of who I am dating or hanging out with at the time.
If you're not already, I really recommend you watching this episode on YouTube, because I can't even with these facial expressions.
Oh, I've been dreading this one, you guys, and I'm just trying to lay it all out and just get through.
You're doing a fucking great job. Go on.
Moved to California, and am now in a very, the highest position that you can be at in this line of work without owning the office. And it was just, work at this time was my identity. I think Kendall has mentioned or will mention that I was working. I am not exaggerating. I was leaving my house at 6:30 in the morning and getting home at 11 p.m. So this created a situation where my colleagues were my friends, and it was extremely inappropriate. And now that I'm in a job that is not that way, I can recognize how fucked up that it all got, because those are people that I'm confiding in, and we're in sales, and there's drug use and there's alcohol use. And I ended up having to felt like I had to lie about, if I'm taking a weekend off, what I'm doing and all of this. And And then, yeah, it all culminated in me. I can't believe I didn't know I was going to tell the truth about this, but praise I'm going to. Culminated in me wanting to go take a weekend off to Vegas and not saying that I was going to be doing that. And obviously had to kind of involve a lot of people in said cover up. And that my boss found out about it. And I was not fired, but I was taken out of the position that I was in. And that for me, in my head, was rock bottom because so much of me was involved in that. And I had moved my life and my livelihood was tied to it. And that's where I think I had been abusing substances and alcohol up until that point, but now I am at home. I had bought a house on top of a mountain, very isolated. I'm not seeing a lot of people. And that's where now I'm not doing drugs and drinking socially. I was doing that by myself. And ended up in a couple more really unhealthy relationships where I was either hiding that or it was a tool in the relationship. And I found myself in just a really, really, really dark place. And I think that I did finally hit a breaking point. And I don't know if I need to go into any more specifics than that, but that's when I phoned a friend.
You called me.
Yeah. And we had spoken before about me moving to Austin. And I had wanted, that was not like out of the realm of possibility for me, but I was so involved in my job and all of that it was, I think I entertained the idea, especially whenever we would come visit. And it was just, such a vibe. And it was just a very, I was in a low spot and you said, come be with me. Moved to Austin. And I think that wasn't the first time we had that conversation, but it was the first time that I said, okay, I'll do it. And I had a job at that time. I was selling trucking insurance and I loved the people that I worked with, the lady that I worked with. But I do think it's very telling that when I went in to tell her that I was moving and I was going to have to quit my job and all of that, she was like, I thought that you were probably going to do that. I think it was very apparent. And I did not know this, but I think it was very apparent outwardly that I was having a really tough time. And within a matter of a month, I think I had you go look at a little place for me. I did not give a shit if it was nice or whatever. As long as I could live in it, you went and saw it. And I decided, it was time to pack up and leave, which was terrifying. And I haven't thought also about the amount of stress that also caused because I did leave a lot behind. I was leaving without a job lined up. I was leaving with a fucking mortgage on a house and was facing having to sell that house without being in the state and in a very weird part of the state that the house was in.
Yeah. We know we say things and then we say that we'll talk about them in later episodes. And sometimes we don't close the loop. So we've mentioned that we tell Julianne sometimes that her mountain is showing. It's because she was living atop a mountain in a very odd little town with odd little critters running around everywhere. And she just forgot how to be civilized a bit.
Forgot my manners. Yeah. And the relationships that I had when I left were 60-year-old people and 60-year-old drug addicts and alcoholics. And Kendall and I also, and I think she'll touch on it too, but we went through a significant amount of loss in a short amount of time. So right after, between the time I graduated college and the time I moved to Austin, Kendall and I lost both of our grandparents. We lost our uncle. And all I will say about that was my dad's side of the family that we had previously spoken about being extremely tight-knit. And that side of the family is completely fractured after everything that's happened between now and then and the losses that have occurred. So that was extremely stressful. We lost a very near and dear family friend of ours. She was 28 years old, and we lost her to melanoma, which is the same, obviously, cancer that we lost my father to. And she was beautiful and so vibrant. So that was horrible. We lost another one of my mom's best friends to who she was like an aunt to us. She was really my dad's best friend, and then became my mom's best friend. But she was killed in a gun accident. She was shot through the wall while she was cooking dinner. I lost one of my only friends in my little mountain town, who was, I think, in his early 30s, and he had a brain aneurysm while he was driving home from work, and they've just found him dead, incapacitated on the side of the road. Kendall lost someone very close to her that we had both worked with in a really bad car accident. And this was all in the period of, I think, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just really, really rough going. And when it's like one after the other like that, I don't think you have time to process one of them and not all of them at the same time. So it was just, you and I, we were talking off mic earlier about there's so many things that we just don't remember or are just very hazy. And you and Kendall really struggle sometimes with not feeling like you're inside your body. I don't struggle with that in the moment, but it is really hard to look back on this period and then the period that we'll talk about that follows and recognize that as myself, because it's not someone that I'm proud of, and just feels very distant from me now, but it's still something that I have to take ownership of, which I think has been a whole other struggle in itself.
Yeah. And we'll sort of wrap up with you, with me. But I'm so proud of you. That was a lot. And I know you've been really nervous, and I think you did a really amazing job.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
More to come.
So Kendall, obviously there's going to be so much overlap in between all of this, but we left you feeling fairly isolated, but having been with your first boyfriend, and then we're going to prom, and we're getting scholarships, and we're going to college, and you're going to CU. What happens next?
Let's see. So I went to CU, and I just remember my boyfriend was not going to college. It was my first love. And I remember sleeping next to him the night in our basement the night before I was supposed to move to CU, and just feeling dread that I was going to have to move to Boulder, to a place where I didn't know anybody, and I now did not have my dad to kind of shepherd me through my college experience, because it was so great for him, and I was so looking forward to it. And then we lost him, and I think it was really hard. So I think I was probably, now I know, I was in a depression for freshman year. I would go to my 8 a.m. class. I would come home. I would eat lunch. I would sleep until my 6 p.m. class. And then I would come home, eat dinner, and go to bed. And that was my freshman year. I did rush in hopes that I would be able to make friends that way. No. I literally called my mom crying after the first day, asking if I could transfer schools. Also, on top of that, CU does not have a graphic design school. There was no reason for me to be at this place. I finally realized that I can't be at a college because my parents went there, because I love the campus, and because I like going to the football games. That does not make for a college experience. So I transferred to CSU, which was a much better fit for me, at least academically. I still felt somewhat isolated, but I think that was just stemming from just not really knowing how to make friends, not being a person. I was just sad. Like I didn't feel like putting myself out there, but I did love my classes. So I was really actually very proud of my college experience. I just was constantly keeping myself busy. And then I graduated and I went on a 5-week-long trip to Europe where I got to go to 15 different cities. And then I think it took me 2 weeks after that. I had 2 interviews and I got my job, and that was my dream job. I loved it. I worked there for 3 years. I met so many amazing people who I still reach out to every time I go back to Colorado. And that was really where I kind of found myself post-college, where I was surrounded by like-minded people all day. So it's like basically impossible not to, form friendships there. So that's where I really came into my own and kind of became more of a little social butterfly. But then I guess I have to mention throughout this whole time I was dating.
I thought we were just going to breeze right by him.
I was dating one of Rikki's former friends. They dissolved their friendship while we were dating, which was really, really hard for me. That was a 5-year long distance relationship that I had throughout college and past college into my professional career. So that kind of took like the whole like dating aspect off of the table of my formative adult years. And then he broke up with me. I was devastated. And after that, I think I called Julianne, and she was like, I live in a house that I bought up on a mountain and I don't have time to furnish it. Like, do you want to come out to California and help me? So I was like, yes. And I think within 2 weeks, I quit my job. I packed up my life and I ventured to the mountain in California, where I quickly found out that moving when you have $500 to your name is not the best idea. This is where that the money, me not being a good person with money comes in, because I got my first job with my grown-up salary, and I did not know how to handle it, and I did not save anything. And then I was like, you know what, we're gonna figure it out. And so I moved in with Julianne. She was very kind to not make me pay rent, and she helped me with all of my expenses and kind of I guess took me under her wing a little bit. And I was for 2 months, I think, just helping her decorate her house.
Yeah, you helped me a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was like, and this is the only way that this would ever work, is because I was not paying rent. And so I was like being kind of the housekeeper, and like Julianne would come home and I would have dinner made, and, like taking care of
my wife.
Yeah, all of the animals and everything, and then just applying to jobs in Seattle and Austin and just trying to and there was nothing happening. So then I was freaking out, and Julianne was like, well, come work with me.
It's going so well.
So I got into sales with her, and
she kicked serious ass.
I did that for about 6 months, and then I went on to a conference, and then I had my mom meet me at the airport, and I broke down, and I was like, Mom, I am miserable. This is awful. I am anxious all the time. I have $200 left to my name. I don't know what to do. I either have to save the $200 or I have to spend it this next week on gas because in the 6 months that I was working in California, I put 20,000 miles on my car. So, my mom ended up floating me for a little bit. I quit the sales job and I became a nanny. Which, if you know me, is
Not a great fit.
not great. Then, after my grandma passed away, my aunt and uncle were visiting us, and they lived in Seattle. And they were like, "Well, I was talking about how I was just struggling, and they were like, "Do you have a lot of stuff here?" And I was like, "No." And they said, "Well, do you want to come live with us?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" And Seattle is my favorite city, I think, ever. And they were offering to let me live with them for free. So I think a month later, I reached back out and I said, "Were you serious about that?" And they said yes. So I was like, "All right, I'm coming." And within the month, I packed up my stuff and I left Julianne on the mountain.
That was a really hard goodbye.
It was a very hard goodbye. I think that time really mended our relationship in a lot of ways. And I think we were both really there for each other. And we bonded. And I was really sad to be leaving. But I felt like I needed to because I was going nowhere. So I moved to Seattle, where I got more nannying jobs and was able to kind of do that until I was able to break back into the graphic design world, where I got a job at Zulily. And it was great for a while. And I got on Bumble BFF in Seattle. I started making friends that way. And then
if you are listening and you have done that, can you tell us your stories? I think that is so brave. It is still not something that I would ever do to this day, just because I'm so nervous, but I've always thought that was so brave.
I worked at Zulily for a bit, and then once again got passed up for a promotion in a really fucked up way. Was working for that company, and that was when I moved Julianne down to Austin, and that was when I met he who must not be named. And 9 months later,
there's a baby.
9 months later, I made the decision to not do the long distance thing again and move down to Austin. Which, as you remember from, I believe it was the first episode, homeboy broke up with me a month before I was supposed to move down. I told him I was coming anyway. But after that, I got back on the old Bumble BFF immediately. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the best out of this situation. And I made some really great friends. And then the pandemic hit. And
dude, being a millennial is hard.
It's really hard, man. But I will say, as much as I love Seattle, I'm very happy that I was not stuck there during the pandemic. Being in Austin, I think, was really the best place for me because there were patios and, largely everything remained open. And so I was able to kind of find my footing here. And yeah, that was then, pandemic. Mm-hmm. My company laid me off. And so I was able to get another job, which was fantastic. And I loved it there. And then I met Lee, and he helped me get a job at my current company, which was truly life-changing. And that, him and that job and you guys made everything that I went through to get it worth it.
Good.
Mhm.
Good. Yeah. I know we're trying to pack a bunch in. So obviously the entire time this is going on, we are all having relationships with each other. And we're so happy that we could be there for you for that. You have a lot more employment trauma than us.
Yeah.
And that really sucks.
It was a tough time for all.
It was a tough time for all of us, but I think that there was one who, up until I moved to Austin, was, well, I don't know. I was just going to say was thriving. And then I said, nope. So, Rick, you have been here the longest, and I think your kind of journey to Austin encompasses this whole time period that we are talking about.
So I graduated from high school, could not wait to get the fuck out of there. Literally never looked back ever. And went to college at Missouri State University. And
Go MSU.
Go Bears.
I have such a fondness for MSU. I didn't go there. I love you all. Fuck yeah, Springfield.
All of us love MSU and Springfield.
You've got to. So I went to MSU. I just went absolutely buck wild in terms of drinking way too much. But it was in the way that everyone around me was drinking, right? Just people blacking out in college. I don't know. Go to bars, throw up, blackout, whatever. And then this is when I really put the pedal to the metal on men, just men. And so I really bounced around in college, just a lot of casual relationships and a lot of casual sexual assaults. Like I think a lot of women, and certainly every woman in this room has had an encounter with. And I think that's super unfortunate that it was a part of the college experience. I hear it's getting better. I don't know. But aside from that,
Gen Z shall save us all.
aside from that, had a really amazing time in college, was assigned a project in which I had to study everything about a particular city, cost of living, so on and so forth, write a paper on it, chose Austin, fell in love with it. Decided I had to go to graduate school if I was going to try to move to Austin for some reason. Got into UT for information science and moved to Austin. And so, but the day after I moved to Austin, I was looking for a job, just walking around on 6th Street looking for a serving or a bartending job.
I would like to clarify 24 hours of being in Austin.
24 hours of being in Austin, and walked into friend's bar and just fell head over heels in love with the bartender. Very emotionally manipulative and abusive right off the jump. More so verbally abusive right off the jump. I mean, as soon as he had me in his talons, he would not let go, and he made sure that I didn't think that anyone else would date me. And it was just a lot of calling me names, bringing up my sexual history, calling me fat when I was the thinnest I'd ever been in my entire life. So that really started a big downward trajectory for me. I was not thriving before Julian got here. Quite the opposite. I was also continuing to drink that much, drink with him that much, get blacked out, fight. Things did get physical a time or two. But yeah, it was in a pretty toxic cycle with this person. So got into a relationship with him, became isolated very quickly. I can see now, knowing what I know, that is there anyone more prime than a girl who has just moved and has no one here but her friend that she moved with. Lauren, I love you. Jesus Christ, thank you. And yeah, my friend Lauren moved down here with me. He was putting her through absolute hell as well. And in that time, I also decided that I hated grad school. Sitting in a basement for 4 hours at night, just like why am I about
Why
to
do I
spend money
need-
here when I can make money out there? So decided to just get a job. Got the first job that I applied for at a software company. Started work there. Right around that time would have been when Zach went to jail for evading many a DUI charge. I think he had like 4 or 5 at that point, because he was a veteran and he had seen combat in Afghanistan and Iraq in 2008, which was the worst tours that ever happened there. So, and I had met his family and they were super nice and super smart, and everyone just seemed to be really worried about Zach. So I was really worried about Zach, and he did demonstrate a lot of tendencies that indicated that he would hurt himself. And I just didn't want to be another person that abandoned him.
Mhm.
So stayed with him while he was in jail for 3 months. I don't know. It could have been a month. It could have been 2 months. It could have been 3 months. We broached over 1 month. I know that for sure. And thought that everything would be better when he got out of jail because he would be so grateful to me for staying with him while he was in jail. That was not the case. And we moved in together when he got out, and things just really ratcheted up in terms of his drug use, being out all night, never knowing what he was doing. He was working at bars. He was increasingly awful to me. And then, one night I came home from, I took a bartending job while I had a software job because I just could not stand to be in my own
Home alone.
body or home alone or home at all. So I was working from 8 a.m. till 4 a.m., which is crazy. And one night got home from my bartending job, saw that his phone was blowing up, saw that he had just texted a girl and had said, "I can't wait to wake up next to you every morning." So he had quite obviously been cheating on me, which I knew, but just didn't feel like confronting that. And that fight that we had, me confronting him about that, escalated to the highest level of physical that it had up to that point. He threw me against a wall and strangled me there with my feet off the ground. And then right around that time, I think that he had posted on Facebook that I was lucky that there wasn't a firearm in the house. And Julianne, you were awake.
Me? Awake?
So you were able to see that and screenshot it before he took it down, which was the only way I was able to get him out of my apartment, because I could prove that he had threatened me with gun violence and I had like blackmail on him. Got him out of the apartment. God, and I remember after that relationship ended, Taylor Swift's album 1989 came out. It was fall in Austin, and it was the first time that I had felt free since I moved there. And a whole new world opened up, and I was able to go and hang out with my friends, and it's just like a really beautiful memory in my days. And met another guy, great guy. We started dating, fell in love very quickly. We moved in together, and the day that we moved in together, my mom, I was also working. So this was when I was working at a nice little startup, and this was where I really discovered drugs. And it was Molly when we were going to like a concert or a show, and that was so fun. And then I was in sales, so I was being exposed to cocaine more and more. But up to that point, it was very much like I was doing it on the weekends, but not even thinking about it during the week, which is a compartmentalization thing I've always had. So it wasn't really getting in the way of anything, my relationships, anything. I was just partying. And then my mom called me the day I moved in with my new boyfriend, and she's just calling me off the hook, and I couldn't figure out why. And I finally stepped out frustrated and called her back on the phone and said, "What? Why? I'm at work." And she said, "It's about Zach." And I said, "Why are we still talking about Zach?" Because breaking up had taken like a lot of time and energy and effort. And she told me that he had died by suicide, that he'd stepped out of his girlfriend's birthday party, his new girlfriend, after he had told her that he'd been cheating on her, and shot himself in the head in the middle of the street. So I went home from work that day after wailing like an animal in the office. And my new boyfriend was there setting up our house. And it was over from there. Like I couldn't sleep. I mean, felt his presence over me, trying to sleep, didn't want to be touched by my boyfriend. So this is when I really ramped up the alcohol and drugs. I was drinking I think every weeknight, going out, not drinking at home alone. I didn't want to be at home. I was going out on weeknights. I was doing cocaine when I was doing that. And this is when, I did some things that I really wasn't proud of in that relationship. 3 different instances in which I woke up somewhere where I wasn't supposed to be, completely disrespecting my boyfriend at home, waiting for me, and couldn't even speak. I mean, it was pretty obvious what had happened, but couldn't even speak to the details of what had happened. And not by any fault of those people. I don't fault them at all either. It was just the whole situation. So got to the point where I was it's not who I am. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like that. And I felt like it really spoke to what I had turned into and that I needed to deal with this. So I was on my way to like a work event, and I was going to be gone at the work event and then in Malaysia and Singapore for the next 2 weeks. So just left him a letter, woke him up and told him we were breaking up. And he said, I don't want to. And I said, me either. But I have to. And it kind of set the expectation that when I came home, we would be completely broken up and we would need to move out of the house and into separate places respectively. And that is what I did. And then, I was feeling really tormented by that and still had so much affection for him. So we tried to work it out for so long, and it just was not happening because I still had a lot to deal with. And that's when I started at Scribe and started really seriously pursuing therapy, did plant medicine therapy, and that really changed my entire perspective. And I would say that is when I started making the biggest shifts that I was alluding to in Julianne getting here, of just not treating my body that way anymore and kind of focusing on bettering myself. And that's when I started to see Darla. So that's why we're bringing her on. And this is when Julianne moved to Austin. And you guys have always loved my boyfriends. And this was no different, Julianne and that boyfriend.
Except Zach.
Yeah, except Zach. And so we had already had a lot of time that we had spent together, all with him. And so when you moved here, that was like the crew. Mm-hmm. It was like my ex-boyfriend, his friends, my new friends, Jules. That was the crew. And you, Jules, just I was frustrated that, in looking back, expectations just weren't set clearly, but I was frustrated to see you kind of still having a hard time and still engaging in the behaviors that I thought that we moved you out of California to not, but you had never consented to that. And so by way of all of that, I was having like a really happy time in my life where I was like living alone for the first time and loving it and crushing work and really focusing on bettering myself, and so excited that you both were going to be living here and we were going to be in the same city for the first time. And then things just jumped the shark pretty fast. I just felt like you inadvertently risked my reputation a lot by saying things to people that I had sort of told you in confidence was the tip of the iceberg. And then as we slid down the iceberg, it just got to be more of, I was just worried about you and wasn't able to talk any sense into you is what it felt like, and didn't want to be doing the things that you were doing. So we just grew further and further and further apart. And it just all sort of culminated in, one weekend, me being out of town. He was watching the dogs because I was out of town. So he was watching my dog, and then the dog that we had shared together was now his dog. And I mean, for a high level overview, you guys left them at the bar, or one of them at the bar. And then you had the other one, and I couldn't find her, and I couldn't get a hold of you, and I did. And then you never came and met me. And it was just a mess. It was just a mess. And that's when I cut off contact with him completely, and had cut off contact with you. Everything was fine. He got his dog back. I got my dog back. But I felt that it had been just a huge, I didn't know how to forgive that. And then I'm not totally sure of the timing with the rest of it, but it just, what you're all waiting for and what this culminates in is just that Julianne did then have what I considered to be an inappropriate relationship with my ex-boyfriend, who I still very much loved at that time and was like trying to make things work out with. And it just got really muddy and messy. So that's when I completely dissolved our relationship. I haven't talked to him since then. And what we kind of had to overcome up to this point. But in talking with you both about it and sort of reminiscing on past friendships, I think it's really important to point out that it was sort of bound to happen. I mean, in you feeling isolated in that sense, and him being someone that you were close to when you moved here. And you and Kendall ran up against those situations with each other and boys. I ran up against those situations with my roommates, Jade and Amber, and boys. And I think it's so funny to look back on now. I think we came at it from a full-blown opposite side of a mountain point of view, where I was like, she should be treating me as a best friend, and I would never forgive a friend for this. And you were like, we are sisters. Like, how does this not supersede what is going on right now, especially when it was such a convoluted, muddy situation? So yeah, that's what happened. And then we've since gotten the privilege to go through 2 years of dark nights of the souls. And that's when in talking with Darla, it became like our only point of conversation was how we were going to make this work. So before we intro Darla, do any of you have anything to add about that time?
I think just what I had said earlier about I don't struggle with feeling present in my body, but I do struggle with looking back on, the past decade of my life and just not recognizing that person. And I know that seems ridiculous to say. And it's also hard because I'm not that far removed from it. We're talking about these things, and it's not like they were a decade ago. It's like they were, a few years ago. And it is just really hard to come to terms with. And I'm not going to give any excuses or explanations or anything like that, because I think it doesn't really matter now. But I am so sorry. And it's so hard to see what you're putting other people through when your self-worth is so low that you don't think that you could possibly be affecting anyone else, because you're just, not even like having any love or compassion for yourself. So I'm sorry, sissy.
I know. It's okay.
I'm hoping that through hashing all this out and everything and putting it on this platform, it can kind of become water under the bridge, and we can all use this as a stepping stone to move forward and just like kind of, not look back and just be sissies and friends and really have the relationships that we want with each other moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't think that we have the only valuable perspectives here. And sometimes it's really a relief to get an outside perspective, which is really what helped all of us through these 2 years of Dark Nights of the Soul, which is a perfect opportunity to bring in Darla, a lady who taught me to not hate myself. So Darla has been my therapist for 5 years now. She is an absolute gem of a lady. She is highly accomplished and brought a lot of good perspective to all of us in talking to us about how siblings interact with each other, what we should have expected from each other, the expectations that we should have set with each other. And basically, I think at the end of the day, made it really clear that what's important is that we're all together now and that we were always bound to rub up against conflict. So without further ado, here is Miss Darla. Hello, Darla. How are you?
Hey, Rikki. I'm great. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you for asking, and thank you for being here today. I think I'm more nervous for you to be on than either one of our moms.
It's an honor to be able to be here with the three of you guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We've been so excited to have you, so have the listeners. And you know that the way that we start these podcast episodes is by asking our crazy question of the day. So the question that we have for you is, what is the craziest moment of synchronicity or serendipity that you've ever encountered, or when, two worlds have collided in a hilarious way?
So, Rikki, this answer is going to have to do with you directly. It was my birthday weekend, and I have a grown-ass son, and we were at Parker McCollum. Kendall's like, "Whoa,
you're not old enough."
So we were at the Parker McCollum show at Stubbs.
Oh yeah,
in
no,
Austin.
but I'm saying she's not old enough.
No, I know.
Old enough grown son. It doesn't make any sense.
I know, she looks amazing.
I was not 12 either. Like, I was young, but I was not that young.
Oh yeah, no judgment. Sorry, that came off.
No, you're good. I always throw it out there because people are like, "Oh shit!" I'm like, no. I was young when I got knocked up, but not that young. So we're at the concert, and my son actually got tickets, and the three of us are there, and we're like at the bar, and my son has dark brown hair, blue eyes, and I look over, and him and Rikki are like flirting and Google eyeing, and I'm like, I look at him like, oh shit, that's Rikki. So I kind of like do let me move my hair. I'm like this.
Oh my God.
I don't want her to see me. And I don't want, I'm not ever going to tell my son, like, hey, Trey, that's a client to see. And so I'm like, I tell my husband, like, let's go over here. So we like move a little bit. They're flirting. My son's like, Mom, did you see her? She's so fucking hot. Like, yeah, she's really hot, right? Like
something. Oh my God. So Jules, do you remember you were actually here for this?
Yeah.
And do you remember what I was doing?
No.
So Darla, in that moment, what was happening? Not that your son is not just...
I probably do. I just didn't realize who it was.
Yeah.
Because I do remember two very cute boys. But continue.
So not that your son isn't just very handsome, but what was happening in that moment is we were at the concert, and Julianne had been, newly in town and was single, ready to mingle, and said essentially that she didn't know how I had so much confidence to go up without any shyness or embarrassment and just hit on people. And I was like, well, it's either goes well or you probably never see them again. And if you see them again, they don't remember you. So then I went up to...
it was hereditary.
So I went up to Darla's son and just like...
You were like, watch this?
Yes.
Let me show you how it's done.
And then quickly just like bailed because it was just like a lesson. And then I walk into the office the next Thursday, and Darla was like, so what did you think of Parker McCollum? And I was like,
Did I tell her I was coming to you? Yeah.
Why? And she was like, oh, I was standing right there. And I thought that I didn't want you to see me and you didn't want me to see you. And I just had literally zero idea that you were there, or I would have given you a big hug and professed to the entire concert venue that you were my therapist, but I did not clock you. You're quite short, but I don't think that's short. So that's very funny. Well, if I haven't said your credentials already, you're a clinical psychologist in LPCS, and I've been seeing you for about 5 years now. So before we dive into the meat of what we're talking about today, could you just tell us a little bit more about you and how you got into your profession and your practice, and what brought you to where you are today?
So usually I'm not the person who talks about myself. It's about you. So that part's a little awkward. Like I said earlier, I did everything ass backwards. I went to college at Texas Tech, was going to be an attorney, and I got knocked up. Had to move back home to my small town. Do you guys know who Snoop Dogg is?
No,
No.
not familiar.
Never
Of
heard.
course.
It's Billy Nelson. So I was like, that's my claim to fame. Both of them have been arrested for possession of marijuana in my small town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Holla.
600, total like 600 people.
Wow.
So I stayed there for 4 years. While my son was up to 4 years, my mom died, and I wanted to get out of the town. While I was doing that, I went to community college and got my associates to be a paralegal. Got a job at a law firm in Austin, and knew I wanted to like still work and do more. When my mom was dying of breast cancer, I remember asking people like, "Don't y'all have counselors?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, like school counselors." Well, school counselors drink beer with my mom, so not ever going to go see somebody like that. But I really thought like, oh, maybe that would be it. Maybe I wanted to work with women who were experiencing cancer. Found out really, really fast. Didn't want to do that. So the whole time that I went to school, I got my LPC, like my undergrad. I got way too many masters to describe because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do anymore. And then I just went on and got my doctoral degree. My goal, guys, I wanted to graduate with my doctoral degree before my son graduated high school. I beat him by 6 months.
Yes. Congratulations. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
That is so incredible. Can we get, you might not even give it, you might be too humble, but I sit in that office once every 2 weeks and try to count. Can we get an official degree count?
So I have an associate's degree in applied science. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. My first master's is actually in HR. I hated HR. Could not, guys, it was worst internship, worst job. Could not stand it. And then I have a master's in counseling, a master's in clinical psychology, and a doctoral degree in clinical psychology.
Okay.
Wow.
6 degrees strong.
Impressive.
That's amazing. She puts us to shame.
She does.
Well, thank God we have you. So where we left off, me, Julian, and Kendall, we were talking about each of our experiences from high school up to all living in the same city together. In that time, I also started I got serious about therapy, and then I got serious about finding out who our biological father was. So that's enter you. I guess first I would love to get the lay of the land of when I was initially coming into you in that mental state, what your thoughts were. And then moving into me telling you that my sisters were moving to Austin for the first time and what you thought. Maybe your take on how you thought that would go.
Whenever you first came in, it was most definitely a transition between dealing with a boyfriend who died by suicide and an emotionally abusive relationship with the current boyfriend, moving out, transitioning into a new city, a new job. And then when your sisters were moving, you were so excited. I mean, Rikki, you were like so ecstatic that your sisters were going to be in Austin. You guys were going to get to be sisters, do family meals together, hang out together. And then maybe like you were still super excited, but then there was transition afterwards or during that time whenever they moved in.
And did you anticipate that? Like on the brink of my excitement, were you like, I don't know if this is going to go how you think it's going to go?
Yes. I'm sure Kendall and Jules got to experience some like being siblings, fighting with each other, loving each other. You didn't because you were raised as an only child. I worried about disappointment and what like the fantasy of sistership looks like and siblings look like, as well as understanding, you know, you guys are going to fight, you're going to argue. You never had any of that. And I think in your mind, the way that you present it, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to have my sisters. It's going to be great. And I'm like, it is. And you guys are still going to fight. And you're still going to have your siblings. The girls went through it where they loved each other, probably hated each other some, maybe not have ever said that they hated each other, but you didn't have any of that. And I worried about like, okay, what's that transition going to look like if you get into a fight with one of them?
And have you seen with siblings that you work with, do you think that they are more likely to not be handicapped in that area, but to not invest as much time and effort into external friendships, especially even as a twin, where you kind of do have, we've talked about built-in best friend, where Kendall and I, you know, we definitely invest into friendships, but not near as much as Rikki. And you think that can be sort of a reason for that?
Yeah. And with twins, that's so fascinating because you can have it and be too much of one instead of being too much like the individuals that you have or that you are.
Right. So I actually thought that was super. So you said that your parents had intentionally like kept you in separate elementary school classes and stuff. And then I was reading like a little beach read called I'll Be You, if anyone wants to check it out. And it was about twins. And they had mentioned the same thing in that book. And then had said that it's like a frequent piece of advice when you start to go looking for, when you find out that you're pregnant with multiples, to try to individualize them as much as possible so that doesn't happen, Darla. So would you agree with that? That's good advice?
It's interesting because a lot of times it's not the twins, it's the parents. I mean, think about how much easier it is to buy like 2 outfits versus 4 outfits or 5 or 6. Or so much easier to just be like, okay, girls are going to sleep together in the same room, same bed. You both like the same thing to kind of like, you know, herd cats together to keep them together instead of keeping them individually. It's a lot easier for some parents.
Speaking of cats, I will be right back.
I will say that I feel like I remember when Julianne said this the first time we talked about it in the podcast. I don't think our parents put us in separate classes to individualize us. I think they did it because we would be distracted and we would be getting in trouble all the time. Like my mom tried to put us in dance or gymnastics or whatever, and we like basically got kicked out because we were like messing with each other the entire time. So I think that was more maybe knowing mom, she probably like read up and stuff, and they probably like that was probably advice that she had read, but I think it was mostly so that we wouldn't get in trouble.
Okay. And then, yeah, that makes sense what she's saying, Darla, what you're saying from a utility standpoint. Just keep them as close together as we can for utility and money purposes and trying to make everything streamlined and affordable and not crazy. And then that could be why we see so often that twins are referred to as the twins wearing the same clothes.
Because we wore the same clothes. We were matching always, and we did share a room until Dad's real estate development took off, and then we got to move into the big house and each have like our own rooms and stuff.
So you, Darla, knew that I was probably setting myself up for a little bit of disappointment that I hadn't encountered yet, because I've never been in a situation to be close enough with Julianne and Kendall or in a close enough proximity for like actual real conflict to arise. And then it was kind of a slow burn, right? She had moved because I had asked her to. Basically, we had sort of agreed on the phone one night as she was having a really hard time. I was like, just come down here. And in my mind, and I obviously wouldn't have said this, but I wanted to help her because she seemed to be stuck in a pretty damaging loop for herself, just with the job stuff and then drugs and alcohol on top of it and being totally isolated on top of a mountain. I just wanted her out of there.
Just to clarify, she and her is Julianne. I moved to Austin almost a year after Julianne did.
Yes. And I think when Darla's talking about me being so excited, it would be for Julianne to be moving and for you to be moving her, like the event.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily take proper stock of the fact that once Julianne got here, just because she was in a new location, she would be super inclined to change her behavior immediately. And then it was just little things that started to pop up. So can you walk me through what you would even say now when you're starting to see like the slow fraying of a relationship, what that looked like on your end and what you advised me?
So whenever Julianne moved and you said her behavior didn't change, my thought was like with you wanting it to change. Like you wanted to like be like the savior, like to help her, to have her do better, to have her grow and not understand that she's still a person and has choice. And that like loving her is both of it. Is having her be who she was, going through all this stuff, as well as her still coming down, being your sister and loving you. I think that was probably one of the hardest things because you didn't want her to experience all the negative. And then I also think it was really hard because you were looking in the mirror and you were worried about going down that path.
So Darla, this would have been things escalated, right? And basically the overarching theme became that I felt like Julianne was telling people things I didn't want them to know that I'd told her in confidence, essentially, like in social situations. And then had just become like there were a few incidents in which she became like I felt that she had really disrespected me. My life that I had built here eventually had been really irresponsible for like with my dogs, and then had gotten into like an inappropriate relationship with my ex-boyfriend. So this is when we hit like the final, like I come into your office and I tell you like, no, we're not talking. I don't know if we'll ever talk again. Mm-hmm. And this is where you start to have to try and counsel me through that. And you were always quite bullish on, I mean, I think it was the topic of every therapy session for like 2 years. And you were always quite bullish on me. The question that you would always ask is, well, what would you have to do to make how would you feel if something happened to her? Mm-hmm. Tell me more about like what you saw in me through that conflict and where you were trying to get me to.
I like how you say it kindly bullish. So guys, I say that my asshole question, like I am a true asshole when I say this, because I would be like, okay, Rikki, like I understand you're hurt, everything that's going on, but what if something were to happen? And she'd be like, I don't know, what do you mean if something were to happen? And I would say, well, this is an asshole question. If your sister were to die, could you just be like, okay, you know what, she's dead. I feel bad because my sibling passed away. I'm going to mourn it, or am I going to be fucking devastated? And usually Rikki would get very emotional, be like, well, the latter. She'd be fucking devastated. I think during that time, Rikki, too, it was healing your inner child, too. I did go back and look at like the EMDR thing, and I was like, oh, there was a lot of like healing the little girl who was by herself, who longed and wanted to be with her sisters, and her sister was here, but her sister wasn't doing what she wanted. And I'm sure that the girls experience that with each other, where one of you wants to do something and you're like pulling her and dragging her. And then also trying to set healthy boundaries where you're like, I can't see her like hurt. I think at first you got pissed off because she was hurting you because of like the social scene. But then it was, no, she's hurting herself, and you couldn't see her hurt herself. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
And that was the entire time that we were not speaking. I think that's where more where I was coming from is I was just distraught that, and I would always think about what if something happened to one of us? What if something happened to one of us? What if something happened to one of us? And I guess it's a lot easier to think that way when you are the offending party. But I was also just I knew that she had a boyfriend that she was really serious about and things like that. And I was really struggling with already having missed big moments and missing more.
Yeah.
And working with Rikki during those big moments was difficult to have you miss those moments.
Well, Darla, if you had been Kendall's therapist during this time, Kendall, what would you have asked Darla? And Darla, what would you have told her?
I think I would probably just ask if there's like any way that I can like help the situation in any way, which I know that there wasn't. And I was just very much trying to be there before both of you and that kind of thing. But
I
yeah,
think you
what would
did.
you?
Like
Mhm.
I do think that you did because you didn't from where I sit and from what I heard, you didn't stir either one of them.
Mhm.
Because sometimes people do. You didn't start either one of them and you just like listened and like loved both of them. And I don't know if you were like, oh, please, y'all get together, like it'd be all three of us when you were by yourself. But from where I said again, it looks like you did really good. That you're like, I'm gonna hold space here, and not judge either one, and not try to like force them to be like sisters,
Mhm.
or talk to each other and all that good stuff.
I know it has been kind of an interesting dynamic because I think I did want them to get like back together so badly, like because I moved down and then what was it, like 4 to 6 months later they stopped talking, and I wanted them, but it's been super interesting because I sometimes find myself missing when they weren't talking because I got to spend more time with them than I ever have because I would make a point of seeing, I really tried to see both of them like at least once a month. So I would like switch off weeks where I'd be like, okay, this week I'm hanging out with Rikki. This week I'm hanging out with Julian. And that was really nice. But it did always feel like there was like an elephant in the room kind of a thing.
Have you not been trying to hang out with us since then just because we've been doing the podcast every
Yeah,
week?
I mean,
It's like, hold on.
no, yeah, it has been because I'm like, I already see you guys. So, something that I'm going to work on.
No,
But yeah,
our little
How
break will be
important
good.
do you think it is, Darla, for more than one, when you have a group of more than one sibling, who I think you have to take age into account if they are close in age? How important do you think it is for them to spend time with each other separately as opposed to like all in a group?
It depends on how much you want to foster the relationships of each one. The dynamic between the three of you guys is, I think Rikki still has, like, had and still has this little part of her. You two will always be sisters. Like, you guys were raised together, and I think sometimes it's like, well, Rikki won't be your sister. One of y'all's podcasts, I don't remember which one said it, but one of you, and maybe it was Kendall, but Kendall was like, Rikki, you're always going to be our sister. I think that Rikki didn't always feel that way and doesn't always feel that way. So I think it's important to still, like, you two have like 18 years. Rikki's trying to make up time, individual and collective time together. I think it's important, just like you would a friendship or a relationship.
do you think that because Julianne and I did have our 18 years under our belt of living together and being sisters, do you think that made it like easier for us to kind of like just automatically assume that Rikki was our sister and that we could behave with her in the way that like we would, because I think that was part of the struggle, was that like we automatically saw Rikki as a sister, which we would, we hold that relationship very dear. But for Rikki, she had to kind of learn. It was more like a friend relationship, I think.
I think that's a good point. I think maybe when I was doing whatever I was doing, I was expecting unconditional, obviously love, but just not expecting to have to face any consequences from my sisters because they were my sisters. And I guess, yeah, there's a difference between you and Kendall. And I think maybe that made me angry because I was like, what the fuck? You're supposed to love me regardless.
Because I had demonstrated that was how it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the question for Darla?
The question was, do you think that it was easier for us to see Rikki as a sister and her to see us as friends?
And you guys talked about it on one of your podcasts about fighting with each other, and then your parents wouldn't know. Rikki didn't have that person to fight, and then to come back. I mean, think of when you guys were kids. Like, what's one of the biggest fights you two had, like, together?
Oh, there was one where we literally were like wrestling each other out the front door, and our neighbor had to come and break it up in the front yard.
and Rikki didn't have that. So then when you guys come in, y'all are like, oh, hey, you're our sister. We're going to do this. And Rikki was like, whoa, wait. We don't do that to each other, because she didn't do that with her friends.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that is. So with you, Julianne, I mean, were you surprised that things got to
Yes.
a boiling point where I was like, I'm done with
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
And then I think mad. Like, obviously, I was having a hard time taking even responsibility and accountability, because I was really also mad that it was going that way. And was like, well, fuck, if this is how it's going to go, this is how it's going to, like, I'll give you something to be pissed off about. Because I think I was obviously sad, but really, angry that because I did not expect it to go that way. I do think, and I was thinking about this morning, I do think that it was overall extremely constructive, because I know that you and I had just talked about, like, 2 days yesterday, oh my God, about, and I think that I had said something that made you that there was someone back in my orbit that you were worried about, and maybe using drugs or, getting crazy like that again. And I was like, no, it's not going to be a problem. And what I said to you is, I'm just over that hump of, I don't want to feel like that again. I don't want to see the sunrise anymore. It gives me so much, anxiety to even think that. But when in truth, I'm doing it for me, but I would not risk my relationship with my sisters again. And I think I'm going to cry. I think didn't say that to you right then, because I don't want anyone being like, oh, well, you have to do it for you. You have to, and it is me doing it for me, but that's just, it's not like it's a non-option. Kendall's not as, it's not as easy to get her excited or to get her to be expressive or to, look forward to something or whatever it is. And it's just how she is. And I think we know her well enough now that doesn't bother us, but it definitely bothers us with other people when they don't meet our expectation of, like, liveliness and expressiveness and things like that.
It's nice to know that doesn't bother you guys, because I've literally talked to my therapist about, like, I mean, Rikki told me something and I didn't react the way I think she wanted me to, and now I feel like I need to address it.
It might actually bother Rikki more than it bothers me, now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, there is oftentimes, if Julianne and I are ever sitting mulling over things, just the grand life suppositions, if you will, it's always me that says, do you think Kendall hates us?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's always you that's like, she might, I don't know. But it is always me that asks the question.
But I think, and if I say she might, I don't know, I think I feel maybe she's annoyed with us, or maybe she doesn't agree with us on something, but I know that she does not hate us, and she would never.
Oh, no, I'm asking if you think that she likes us as people or would be friends with us.
Yeah.
That is the doubt that I encounter in our relationship, is like, I don't know if she likes me.
Oh, see, that's how I
I
had anxiety starting this podcast with you guys, because I was like, I feel like they think that the podcast would be better with just them because they look the same. And like,
No.
I've always felt like I make our narrative less interesting because we're not we're not all identical.
What the fuck?
I know.
Kendall, it's very interesting to have you. Like, I don't know you. I just know you from what Rikki has said, but the balance that you bring, my thought would be is like, okay, I don't know you, but you're probably like way, way, way more like sensitive, caring. And your like calmness and intriguingness it's like intriguing to listen to and be like, oh, what's Kendall going to say? Or what's she not going to say? Why is she holding back? Because I think you hold back.
I've not held back the most in this podcast that I ever have in anything we've ever done. So
That's
getting there. So Darla, getting back to so Julianne and I are having a bunch of strife. We're going in and out of talking to each other. And then like a big thing happens. And then we got to a point where we might have been able to get over that. And then another big thing happens. Was there at that breaking point, and with everything that was packed into that after that happened, did you think at any time, I really don't know if she's going to talk to her sister again?
No, I thought that you would always talk to her. It would take time. You were hurt, like you were crushed and devastated, but you would talk to her.
Mm-hmm. And so when I came to you 2 years later, like, I think that I had been showing wear anyway. Like, I think it's something you were really trying to soften me up. Colin was really trying to soften me up. And then, so before I received the letter that Julianne gave me through Kendall, did you think that making up was imminent or not? Like,
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, you did an exercise where you wrote her, but you never sent it to her. You had texted her, like the hurt. Yeah,
no,
you had that. You did a homework assignment, but you were like, I'm not going to send it to her. I'm like, well, that's fine. You don't have to send it to her. Just like, because you're really good at writing, just that way you have it out. But yeah, I did think that and especially because you were getting closer to Kendall, that it was inevitable for you all three to be together.
Mm-hmm. So then when I received the letter, which we'll talk about more in next episode, and we're kind of getting to the point where we're making up. What were your thoughts? What do you think I could have, what were you like wanting to kind of grab and scream at me that you couldn't? And what would you have wanted to tell them as well?
For you to be like, because I tried a lot to be like, Jules is Jules, and let her like be who she is and still love her, like that unconditional love. But I wanted you to like see that with Jules, like that you guys could fight and still unconditionally love each other, and that she could be different than you. Because I think Kendall is you're like, oh yeah, Kendall's really different, but I think Jules, you're like, well, she is different, but she's really not really different. And that you can love her even though she did something that would hurt your feelings really, really bad. Because you said you would never forgive a friend for that. Mm-hmm. Like, she's not your friend, she's your sister. And sisters do that. Humans do that sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's what we're butting up against here, is exactly what you said. Like, I would never forgive a friend for that. And me not having the established sense of being sisters. So this turning into an even bigger minefield than it would have been with like, for instance, if it were Juliet and Kendall. That's interesting. Yeah. And then just in parting, first, then you were also counseling me through trying to find my biological father, finding him. And we've seen now on the internet that this is a whole community of people, donor conceived people or not parent expected, or a whole group of people whose lives have been upended by DNA discoveries and leave everyone feeling a little bit differently about it. Do you see that often in your work?
Yes. On both sides.
Okay. And what is it like to counsel those people? It's like, what are some trends that you see?
Oh, it's so interesting because the people who do the DNA test, if they find out that they're not their family, is not their family, then they want to like search for their family. Or some people don't want to have anything to do with that family, or they do, and they don't get what they want in return. And when I say don't get what they want in return, they don't get like the reaction. They don't get the open arms. Some people on the other side are like, nope, doors closed. Don't want to have anything to do with that. By you doing the DNA, I did my DNA. I knew that I had a cousin that my aunt put up for adoption, only because somebody had told me when I was in high school, there's a girl who's very similar to you. And my mom was like, yeah, your aunt put, a girl up for adoption. But I found out that I have another cousin that the same aunt put somebody else up for adoption. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is really weird. And what sucks even more is my aunt didn't want to have anything to do with the second girl. They're both named Sarah, which is weird. Yeah, very, very, very weird. But I was like, oh, this is really interesting of like how it comes out. And some people are open to it and other people are not.
Mm-hmm. So would you then, I'm just assuming from what you said, advise people to just like tread with caution and go into it with little or few expectations, or even prepared for the worst? Or what, if people are going to embark upon that journey, what is the advice that you would give to them?
I would say to prepare for the worst, and also to ask yourself, like, why are you doing this? Like, what is your motivation to want to know? What do you want to get out of it? You and I talked a lot about that. Like, what is the idea of like, who is your DNA? Who are you? What makes you up? But to also know that the DNA doesn't make up your whole upbringing, your whole people. Your parents, I know like Kendall talks about like like her mom is her mom and her dad is her dad. Doesn't have anything like looking out, for bio dad or anything like that. It's like, no, these are still your people. But just to like process it and really think about like, okay, why do I want to do this? And also know that people are assholes and they may slam doors. They may not be nice. You may not get the reaction. It may not be the family. If you're even looking for the family. I don't think you were looking for the family, but you may not get the reaction that you want.
I just realized, because I think we've just assumed up until this point that Kendall and I are less invested in this because we grew up together. But I think Kendall and I, based off of what you're saying, just less invested in finding the biological, people related to us. Maybe it's more so because we grew up, we always knew that the two people that were raising us were not biologically related to us, and we saw them as our family. They were our family. So I think maybe that's why we had less or yearning to find out who that was, and I think less investment
more
altogether.
Of the same for you, basically, but exactly. With less. That's interesting.
And also like the loyalty of your parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon with when humans are adopted that like if their adopted parents are awesome, great, and amazing, they're like, no, these are my parents. It's not even like adopted. It's these are my parents. I don't care who I came from. These are my humans, and I'm loyal to my humans.
And my humans chose me. And my loyal to me. Yeah.
And not wanting to hurt their feelings, because in the moms, it's interesting. I've worked with moms, not dads, but the moms whose daughters especially have went to like go meet the other person. There's a lot of fear there too.
Mm-hmm.
But that they're really brave. Like your mom was really brave.
Yeah.
Both moms.
Both moms.
What advice would you give to people who would like to have the conversations that we've been having on the podcast with their family, but don't have this kind of a platform to be able to kind of facilitate it? Like, how do you start those conversations?
Just start it. Just ask it. Just whatever but I'm an upfront person, or to be like, just to ask the question, or to have the conversation. I think like with mental illness, I think it's something that everybody should talk about. And when I say mental illness, I don't mean like the bad part, like depression. Just talk about it. Talk about both sides. Flip the coin. Like, what would A look like? What would B look like? Just to open it. We as humans will talk about a whole lot of stuff, but we won't talk about some of the stuff that's really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you, if someone's not such an upfront person and they need to just say it, how do you advise, or how would you find that within yourself? And a lot of people don't necessarily know what the question is. Like, how do you uncover that for yourself?
Well, through therapy and whatever their modality is, if they're talking, writing, songs, whatever their way of like expressing themselves, I would recommend to do that. And some people have like, I call it the effective pause, where I can come on and say it today, and then I need to have a couple of days to process it because I got more other stuff to say. But then other people are like, no, I got a couple of days and I need to think about it before I say it. And how do I say it? And just have the uncomfortable conversations. Mm-hmm. I think with COVID, it was so interesting working with humans. And you guys are going to be like, oh my gosh, Darla. Rikki already knows. But okay, how many times do people say like, oh my gosh, did you get the COVID vaccine? Lots of people, right? Mm-hmm. How many times, like when you're on a date, how many times do people say like, oh, hey, do you see a therapist? When was your last STD test? Mm-hmm. That's way more awkward and odd, right? Mm-hmm. But we're talking about COVID. So I'm like, why can't we talk about all this stuff? Why can't we just bring it up and just ask the question?
And I think more people are open to hearing the question than not. I think it's the fear belongs to the person that wants to ask the question. So I think you keep saying, put yourself in that person's shoes.
So I think being able to overcome that and say, okay, I'm really scared to ask this, but would I be offended or hurt if someone actually asked this of me? And I'm sure if you're wanting to ask that question, the answer is going to be no, I wouldn't be offended if someone asked it to me as well. So maybe just kind of trying to conquer that fear that way.
And most people want the question to be asked.
Yeah, exactly.
And to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And then just one last thing. So we're going to get into how Julian and I made up, how that went in episode 9. But obviously it happened or we wouldn't be sitting here today. So how does that make you feel, Darla?
I'm super excited. I never have goals for the people that I work with, but I'm super excited, like to be able to hear you guys, to see you guys. I just would encourage you guys to be able to have like conflict conversations. What would it look like if you guys all didn't agree? And you're able to like hold and be like, no, I don't agree with this. I think you guys should pick a topic and each one of you have a different opinion on it. Even if that's not truly your opinion, kind of do like debate, be like, have this topic and be able to have the conversation. And I also think that like Rikki and Jules need to have like the same one and have Kendall be by herself and Kendall be like, no, this is what I think, this is what I believe, and hold it.
I think that's such a fun idea. We got to flex the muscle on unimportant things before we flex it on important things.
Yeah, practice for conflict.
We should
like
practice.
a mock trial.
Interesting.
I
Wow.
love this idea. We'll do that for our next game night.
Yes, next game night. Well, Darla, thank you for your counsel over the past 5 years. Thank you for joining us just in time for Mental Health Awareness Month and Military Appreciation Month. I know that you help people in that Venn diagram often, but we so appreciate you coming on, and I so appreciate you just being there for me for 5 years, and I know that the audience appreciates your unique insight. So thank you.
And it's been an honor for you guys to let me be a part of this podcast, and Rikki, for you to let me be a part of your journey. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you,
Darla.
Darla.
Good night, Dr.
Have a good night.
Darla.
Nice to meet you.
What a gem.
She was lovely.
She is. I can see why. I can see why you've been with her for so long, and what a great impact that she has indubitably had, and very grateful to hear from her.
I just wanted to share just one thing that she said that really stuck with me, because it's a way that I've been thinking ever since, as Julianne pointed out. We had like a really tough couple of years where I think we were literally at funerals, every other month or something. It was ridiculous. And ever since then, I've kind of tried to treat my relationships as if something did happen to that person, would you be proud of the relationship? Would you have regrets, anything like that? And I think that's a really good way to treat life, but it also comes from a very deep place of a lot of fear. My biggest fear is losing people, and I think part of the reason why, and we've talked a lot on this podcast about my friend issues, I think I put a lot of pressure on relationships and on friends, and because I am so terrified of losing people. But I just thought that was a really interesting way in which she related to you, and how I think we all have unique relationships because we have experienced more loss than I think a lot of people our age have had to go through. So I thought that was really interesting, and I hope it can be helpful for other people as well.
Yeah, same. Jules, anything?
Yeah, I have. I mean, both of you know I've been on pins and needles for this, and I do. There's definitely a measure of fear for me in just these last few episodes and all around, because I know that we all went through things, but I was definitely the most overt in my coping mechanisms. So to hear her have a lot of grace, I almost like don't feel that worthy of it, but I do. I am so grateful just to be here with both of you right now. And I'm really happy that this is over, this episode. And yeah, I just have a lot of gratitude for her and for both of you. And we'll do better.
Yeah. And I think that if we were to look back on everything that we went through together and apart and had let a fucking man ruin it, that would have been embarrassing. So if anyone out there is struggling with something like this or having a hard time seeing how you could mend something like this, that's it. I mean, it's not worth ruining a friendship or a sisterhood or a relationship that you've worked so hard for over something that was an accumulation of shit that had happened to all of us. Mm. And honestly, I think that we will look back on it 10 years from now and be really, really grateful that it all happened exactly the way that it did, because I'm already looking back on it now and kind of thinking that. Mm-hmm. So thank you for coming to the table so earnestly and being willing to repair things with me, Julianne, even after I did not speak to you for 2 years. Kendall, thank you for being there for all of it. An excellent middleman you are. Hope so. And before we sign off, I do want to say, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month and Military Appreciation Month, that if you are facing a crisis and you do not have a Darla, dial 988 to reach the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are a new or expecting mother, you can call 1-833, or if you are a new or expecting mother, you can call 1-8339-HELP-4-MOMS for confidential professional advice. If you're feeling overwhelmed or just need someone to talk to, ask your healthcare provider. Contact the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP, or visit www.findsupport.gov. If someone you know is going through a tough time, you can also reach out to them and tell them that you're there for them. We're all in this together. And we are signing off. But before, we want to give you a little preview of next week's episode. We are finding out exactly how Julianne and I made up. And we spend the rest of the episode talking about how we found our biological father after I took that DNA test. So we can't wait to see you there. And in the meantime, we hope you leave feeling a little bit more normal in your own family dynamic, excited for the possibilities, and more curious about the world around you. Have a good week, take things in stride, and leave people better than you found them. We'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.